Okay, hi everybody. Um, I'm Alaya Don Johnson. Thanks so much for coming to this virtual reading at NASFiC. I'm going to read about 15 minutes or so from my latest novel, out July 21st, from Tor, Trouble the Saints. This is the cover of the galley. And so I'm just going to read from like the absolute very beginning and head up to around 15 minutes. If people have questions, you can put those in the Discord. They'll pass them on to me. And I can kind of spend the last 5 minutes answering some questions. If not, I'll just, keep going. So I think what I have is, I can kind of adjust it to how things go. So I'm just going to get started. The very first section actually has these little interstitial bits, but they're a little hard to read, so I'm gonna skip them. You won't notice, but if you have read the novel, you might notice I'm not reading this. I'm just FYI. Okay. I woke with the dream late on a Thursday night, sometime in July. Tell me, the dentist said while he lit my cigarette. He was using the lighter Dev gave me after I dropped mine in the Hudson, the one I kept by my bed still. I blew a shaky plume that scattered in the crosswinds of the fan and the raunchy East River musk slinking through my open window. Was I in it? He asked when I didn't say anything. The dentist was nervous, which made me laugh a little, considering, and he eyed the holster hanging easy and loose on the post of my bed. Nope, I said, but Vic was. The dentist, my lover, squeezed my shoulders. He was looking at me like anyone might, or at least anyone who heard that Victor's angel had at last just had her second dream. Like he was working out which runner would take his numbers on the day, hour, and minute of my death. You get the hands with a dream that runs true. In Harlem, we might throw a party or we might keep it real quiet. Sometimes that extra dose of juju doesn't go over well with the neighbors, but we always play the numbers. The dream that gives you the hands never fails, they say. Well, what the Lord giveth, he can taketh the hell away. You get a second dream, you and your uncanny hands better play the numbers so your widow can pay for your casket. Victor came up to me in the Pelican with Redman just behind him. He said, here's a job for you, Phyllis LeBlanc. And then I was standing next to him in this long white dress. I had on my holster, but there were two severed hands in it instead of my knives. And then Redman pointed to me and said, you killed that man, just like the end of some Charlie Chan flick. Can you believe it? As though that would surprise anyone, let alone Redman. The dentist didn't laugh. And then a wind blew through, a hot wind, and it was so bright and blue I could hardly see, just Redman's silhouette like a halo. He lifted his arms and said, don't fail us. And then I heard someone's voice calling my name. That was it. Don't fail. Now, the dentist laughed. Have you ever failed at killing someone, darling? My heart puckered like an old wound. No. Are you sure it was really that kind of dream? My hands still ached from the memory of it all. The last time the dream came down, I'd been 10 years old, and my easy knack for throwing darts had become, overnight, the uncanny force that makes folks slide away from you at church but come up to you after to ask for their numbers. They said we had saints' hands, called us jujus and witches and confidence artists. You believed or you didn't, no matter to the hands. They were our latter-day flood, or our plague, descended upon us after emancipation. Ever since we moved north, the extra had run in my family. My great uncle could tell a card just from touching it, and my great great grandmother could pick up lightning in a storm. Mama used to say that there were fewer of us in every generation, so she didn't know why the dreams had struck two of her three children. I think she wanted to believe that it wasn't her fault, especially after my brother died, especially after I went downtown. But now I hadn't done a job for Victor in nearly 7 months. I told the man who gave me my pass that I was thinking of a different future. He hadn't said no. It was, I said, soft, that kind of dream. Oh, Phyllis. It had been Dev's voice at the end of the dream, just his voice, warning me against nothing I could see, just his voice, pushing me awake and away from him again. He had only ever called me Phyllis in extremity, mortal danger, orgasm. I wondered which it would be this time. Christ, said the dentist, jamming his cigarette into my silver ashtray and getting another. Christ, where's that lighter? I hate even thinking about Redman, and you have to go and dream about him. He's not so bad. Not like Victor. The dentist flinched. You know what they say, the things he's done. You just like him because he likes you, you and that snake girl. What's her name? Tamara, I said, not for the first time. The star of the famous snake dance at the Pelican Club was my best friend in the city. Lately, because my life has not tended to kindness, she'd also been Dev's girlfriend. But my own lover couldn't bother himself to remember the name of some Negro showgirl. I leaned over to the dentist to take another cigarette too, but instead he caught up my hand and gently traced its scars. I hated when he did that, though I never stopped him. The dentist's hands were chapped with alcohol and smelled like rubber, while I rubbed mine with shea butter every morning, just like my mother. But his had done nothing worse than pull teeth and fix caps for Victor and his men. He found my scars to remind me of the necessary distance between us, the dentist and Hatchet Girl. Are you going to take the job if it comes? Was it disgust that flattened his tone, or indifference? My heart shuddered uselessly, but I kept steady and kissed him behind his left ear the way he liked. He groaned. I wouldn't lose him. The dentist was my bargain. The dentist I could keep. It was easier to move through the world with him at my elbow than alone when the doormen were more suspicious of women of my complexion. Unlike what most white men of my acquaintance, he rarely let a bad word escape his lips about Negroes or even any other group. Besides, he was handsome enough and in possession of an understanding wife. For those qualities, I overlooked his other lapses as a lover, an aversion to cunnilingus, the ghoulish whiteness of his capped teeth, the faint but clinging scent of antiseptic. My dissatisfactions were, I knew, the inevitable neuroses of his profession, and considering those of my own profession, I was inclined to anticipatory forgiveness, hoping to get the same gold for myself. If I lost him, I wouldn't have an easy time finding an old man half so nice, not at 35, with my first grays wriggling out of my limeade hair and the scars that only Dev might have loved. How long has it been since the last one, darling? Months, I said, not wanting to own the number, 7, which felt too long and too short. I took a breath before answering the other question. They're bad people, you know. That's all Victor gives me. Murderers and rapists, real scum. When I signed on with Victor, that was our deal, that I'd be more than a hatchet man, that I could make the world a better place. By killing people? You really believe that? I could hear Dev's voice in the silence. The dentist only nodded. Russian Vic's angel of justice, his holy knife, pronounced carefully, like he was reading it from a book. My fingers locked. Most people called me that first thing, Victor's angel, sometimes of justice, but only a few, the ones who had known me longest, called me his knife. Where did you hear that? I asked. The dentist looked out the window. The Hindu bartender, Dev, right? Called you that once. Stuck in my head. Sounded more biblical when he said it, though. To Dev, there was no such thing as holiness in violence. I hadn't quite believed him when he first said so, not even when I let him take me from the city. He told me about karma and the weight of our past and present lives, but I only felt it long after. These days, I avoided Victor. I refused jobs. I worried alone because I could not add to my ledger and I could not bury my knives. But Redman would visit soon. The dreams the hands give don't lie. I had to choose one more time. I could go back to Harlem, to the shabby familiarity of the old apartment complex at the corner of 130th and Lenox, move in with my sister Gloria and her husband Tom and their kids. Redman would find me there, but he'd leave me alone if I asked. I wouldn't have Dev, and I wouldn't have the knives, and I wouldn't have everything I hated and loved about being Victor's angel of justice. Gloria loved me, but she wouldn't open her home to a murderess, not even her sister. Aren't you afraid? The dentist asked. For a jittery moment, I thought he had read my mind or seen my ghosts. Lenox Avenue, the Tony apartments on Sugar Hill around the corner, afternoon number runs for Madame Stephanie and the Barclay brothers, the barbershops and the stoops and the rent parties and the buffet flats that lasted till morning, the sex and the poetry, policy slips like numbered confetti and the silk purse bound tight by my garter. But the dentist only knew Phyllis LeBlanc, not Phyllis Green. Afraid of the second dream, he said, when I just stared at him. My voice cracked on a laugh. It's just superstition. I know someone with the hands in Uptown who's had 4. Most white folks had either never heard of or didn't believe in the hands, but the white men in Victor's service all believed, or at least were good at faking it. The dentist gave a very sour smile. Or Russian Vic, who's had, what is it now, 7? This was a bit of a joke, too dark and too dangerous to make at any other hour. Victor claimed he had the hands, but no one quite believed him. He would make announcements out of his dreams, listing out his visions for those who had betrayed him. You learn to fear those if you want to last. The dentist fell asleep and I stayed awake for a little while longer. 10 years ago, I had walked away from the happiest life I would ever know for the sake of a pair of hands. And now, if I had dreamed true, Red Man would bring me another set. I wondered if I could make a different choice. A little before 6 a.m., an hour I made a point of never seeing from a vantage other than the night before, I woke again. It was the dentist this time, his insistent hand on my shoulder. I started to complain, but even in the pallid dawn light, I could see the whites distinct around his irises and felt the urgency in his grip. He tried to speak. A lady, he finally said, on your stairwell. I grabbed my holster and stumbled out of bed. My eyes were still foggy, but my hands were singing. This time, they said, and I told them not to get their hopes up. I was through with the justice racket. But still, I ran out in an old teddy and bare feet and took a holster with 4 sharp knives, eager for whatever had scared my lover so. I pushed open the fire door. It was heavy with a body's weight, and though the woman might already be dead, she slid down 3 steps and groaned. Her face looked worked over, cut, bruised, crusted with dried blood. Livid welts circled her wrists, about the width of Victor's preferred rope, but her limbs were free. A gun bulged from a pocket of her skirt. I climbed over her and squatted. Now, who the hell are you? I pushed back her hair, dirtied and gray from her forehead, bloody, and studied her features, which a few thuggish fists had done their bit to rearrange. I didn't recognize her. The woman started moaning again and shaking her head back and forth. She would come to soon, and I didn't like the look of that gun. I pulled it from her pocket, and a crumpled paper with familiar writing spilled out onto her lap. Victor. My pulse sped. I checked the stairwell again, but I saw only the dentist peeking nervously around the door. What's this about, darling? Shh. I swatted at his voice. I read, Phyllis, meet Marianne West. I know you haven't worked on my word alone yet, so Red Man will be by to give you the details later, but I wanted you to get a chance to meet your next job. Thought maybe it would whet your appetite. She's done some very, very bad things, Dollface, more than enough for my angel. Don't you like her? Don't you miss it? This isn't the job for turning me down again, baby. Weren't we great together once? I miss you. Sorry about that. My dog is barking at someone on the street. I put my head between my knees and counted to 10. My hand already held a knife. It jumped with each breath. I didn't remember pulling it. Phyllis? Said the dentist from the doorway. Oh, God, whispered the woman, whose name was Marianne West. She pushed herself away from me, fell down a few more steps, and lurched to her feet. Above us, the door slammed. The dentist's heavy gallop receded. Coward, I thought amiably. The woman lunged for the gun, and I let her, at first because Victor's threat filled my head, and then because I got curious about what she might do next. She fumbled with the catch. I watched this, judged the opportune moment, and leapt. She only had time to squint before I slashed her trigger finger and tugged the piece gently from her grip. Marianne West screamed. It echoed in the stairwell and grew into something eerie, hideously familiar. My guilty burden, momentarily suspended by an unholy joy, reasserted itself. For 15 years, I'd killed almost every time, Victor asked. Was it any wonder that he wanted my uncanny hands back at his disposition? If I refused this time, I wouldn't be his angel anymore. I'd just be Phyllis from 401 Lennox. Phyllis who went downtown and came back haunted. Phyllis, alone and probably dead. Oh, God damn, Victor, he could have knocked this woman off easy as you please. No mess about it. He didn't need me to kill for him, but he wanted me, which was worse. What have you done? I asked Marianne West. What's your mortal sin? Sometimes their confessions made it easier. She glared at me with furious, frightened, swollen eyes. Are you going to kill me, finally? I should have said no, but I tossed the 5-inch knife from hand to hand, frightened her because I could. What did you do? We locked eyes for a long moment. Then the woman turned around and walked slowly down the steps. She didn't look back once, even when she stumbled, braver than a lion. I admired her and loathed myself and prayed that she would get out of town quick before I could catch up. A muffled sob echoed from 4 stories below, then the slam of a fire door. I'm going to keep reading until the end of this section. So, there'll be a couple of minutes left if someone has any questions. Otherwise, I'll just close that. I took the gun and the note and staggered back to my apartment. My lover was long gone. He hadn't even bothered to shut the door behind him. I found my cigarettes and my lighter by the bed, then sat by the window to smoke. I sucked the first cigarette down fast. When I went to light a second, my thumb caught on the circle that Dev had scored into the chrome with a fishhook. This means it's yours, Dev said, and I said, it's lopsided, and he had smiled, slipped it into my coat pocket, took my hand, and told me it was time to run again. I flipped the lighter in my right hand, balanced it on my fingertips, one at a time, then on my knuckles, tricks that marked me just as much as the knives. The world didn't hold so many of us, and often the juju was just about as useful as a nickel at Tiffany's. But Dev was different, not just because of his dusk brown skin and aura of beatific serenity. Dev's hands, his knack for feeling threats made him a good gin runner and reliable bartender to have the Pelican. He could even lend the service to whoever he was touching, but he had stopped telling me about my threats early. It must have felt like bailing out the Titanic with a spoon. Dev only started working with Victor after I left him, after Red Man came to find me in that little house on the river and showed me the pictures of Trent Sullivan's victims. All those bodies, young and old, women and men, all races, bound in a grisly fraternity by their missing hands. Victor asked for you especially, he had said. I had known Dev would never forgive me if I killed again, but I had pretended that he might, and I left. Okay, so that's the first chapter. We have like 3 minutes left, so if you type any questions in Discord, I'll be able to see them and respond. Otherwise, I didn't actually describe what the novel's about, so I'll do that in the 2 minutes I have. So as you could probably tell, it takes place in 1940s New York City. Really specifically, it takes place in New York City the summer before the US entrance into World War II. So it's kind of like an in-between time. It follows Phyllis Green, AKA Phyllis LeBlanc, a light-skinned Black woman from Harlem who has been passing for the last 15 years with the mob as a hit woman in this world. It's kind of very light alternate history. Certain people of color have powers, juju, which is in their hands. And so they're called kind of saint's hands or conjure. And Phyllis very specifically has very uncanny aim, which she could do a lot of things with, but she has chosen to be an assassin. And very specifically an angel of justice for a white mobster. Presumably she's only killing really bad people, but as is the case often in noir novels, she discovers that the truths that she had tried to believe about her life that made it easy were actually hiding a lot of violence, not just the kind of overt violence that she's enacting by killing people, but structural institutional violence. So it follows her ex-lover Dev, and her best friend Tamara in a kind of 3-part structure. And so yeah, I hope you guys maybe check it out. It's my first novel in 6 years, so I'm really excited about it. It's been a long journey to kind of be back here, and I'm really excited, even though, of course, everything's very different publishing in this pandemic year. But you know, different, not necessarily terrible, and in a lot of ways really gratifying, wonderful. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, Trouble the Saints, out from tour, available where books are sold. And please support your local bookstores if you are going to buy it. Bookshop.org is a great place to do so. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.